I am Riley, 32 years old, consultant by trade. Careful by nature. Mornings begin with black coffee and a legal pad on my small kitchen table. Nights end with a blue folder tucked under my arm, like a habit I cannot shake. I live in a modest apartment where the radiator hums and the hall clock keeps honest time. On the bookshelf sits a single silver picture frame turned face down. Some objects do more good that way. My family name is Green. In our town, the Green Estate is a landmark with white columns and a driveway that curves like a generous signature. People point to it during holiday lights, tours, and talk about old money as if money could hold its breath that long. By appraisal, the main house alone is worth more than $2 million. There is a lake cabin and a tidy portfolio of business shares besides. My parents call it legacy. I have learned to call it leverage. Legacy is what you pass along with care. Leverage is what you swing when you want someone to bend. Harper has always been the golden child. When Harper brought home a middling grade, the story at dinner became resilience. When I brought home straight honors while closing at the grocery store 5 nights a week, the story became predictability. If Harper wanted a camera for a side project, a box arrived with foam cutouts and extra lenses. If I needed a laptop to finish a paper before finals, I was told to use the library. The words were gentle, almost loving, but they stood on my chest just the same. I learned early that my worth in that house rose with my usefulness. I was the designated driver before I could afford a car of my own, the babysitter without a rate, the person who held the door and turned off the lights after every gathering. There is a particular pride in being reliable. There is also a danger. Reliable people get built into the architecture. You forget you can move. Still, I made a life that looked like mine. Work suits me. It rewards clarity and keeps a ledger that does not play favorites. I kept careful records of everything that mattered and some things that did not. Copies of copies, receipts pressed smooth, sticky notes with dates written out because numbers mean more to me when I can hear them. When you are raised in fog, you learn to carry your own lighthouse. The stakes shifted the day I opened a separate savings account and began to put away money for a home. No gifts from family, no cosigner, just my name and the slow arithmetic of restraint. I ate at home. I took the bus. Vacations were weekend walks through neighborhoods with good trees. After years of small decisions, the total grew into something that looked like a down payment. By late autumn, I had set an offer on a condo that faced morning light. My broker spoke of keys and closing and the quiet pleasure of signing your name where it belongs. For the first time in a long time, I let myself imagine a door that locked from the inside and answered only to me. The Green Estate, though, has a way of turning personal milestones into family theater. My parents believe in gatherings, birthdays, holidays, graduations. The made-up occasions that fill a calendar when people fear silence. They throw parties as if applause could settle a house account. It was during planning for my graduation celebration that I noticed the tone around me shifting from warm to watchful. A cousin asked if my savings were tied up or liquid. An uncle wondered aloud about property taxes on large homes. Harper joked about how helpful it would be to have a consultant in the family when navigating finance. Jokes often carry cargo. I kept my answers light. I had also kept one rule and made everyone say it out loud years earlier after a scare with a loan document. No signatures without me present. I had written the sentence on an index card and slid it across the table then. I watched each pair of eyes cross it. It is a simple rule. Simple rules are easier to enforce. As the celebration drew near, I set my own clock. Tuesday at 5 in the evening would be the final RSVP for the party. Privately, the line I would not let anyone cross regarding my new home. I wrote the hour in ink on my legal pad. I circled it. I underlined it once. Then I took a breath that felt like posture returning to a slumped spine. A deadline is not a threat. It is a promise to yourself that your time is not a hallway anyone may enter. I spent that week assembling what I call quiet armor. I printed my pre-approval letter and the savings statements showing more than $180,000 saved across years. I added a simple budget sheet that outlined my monthly obligations and left a margin for the unexpected. I drafted a short email to myself that read, in plain words, no consent to any mortgage, refinance, or lien. My signature below, the date spelled out so there could be no mistake. Paper, when ordered, has a way of steadying the hands that hold it. The family map remained unchanged. My mother spoke in plans. My father preferred rules he could rearrange. Harper lived in demands disguised as needs. They loved me in the way some families love their most reliable chair. Grateful it is there, surprised and annoyed if it is moved. But I am not furniture. And this is the point where the story begins to tilt. 2 days before Tuesday, a message with the subject line "Family Future" arrived in my inbox. I did not open it. I clipped it to the blue folder with a paper clip and set it under the lamp. I have learned that rushing into someone else's urgency is how you misplace your own. If a matter is real, it will still be real in the morning. If it dissolves overnight, it was never mine to carry. On Monday, I made a small ritual of readiness. I walked to the county building on my lunch break and asked a clerk to explain, in slow, careful words, how property records work, what a notice of interest is, how a trust records itself in the books, so that title does not skip like a stone. She answered without flourish. I wrote every step down. I bought a new pen on the way back to the office. A sturdy one with a fine point. I like how certain tools remind your fingers to be sure. That evening I called the caterer and confirmed head count. I straightened the apartment. I chose a small suit jacket I keep for days when I need to look like the clearer version of myself. I set the blue folder by the door. The clock above the stove ticked softly. The hour moved forward. My shoulders lowered to where they should have been all along. You might ask why I kept extending grace to people who offered me so little. The answer is not noble, it is common. Children grow into patterns the way vines grow toward light. Changing direction can hurt. But pain is not the only teacher. Practice is. I had practiced saying no in small ways for a year. Tuesday at 5 in the evening would be the first time my no stood on a stage of its own. I slept well for once. In the morning, I brewed coffee and ate toast with honey. I opened the picture frame, looked at the last decent photo we had taken together, and turned it face down again. Not out of spite, but as an act of composition. Some foregrounds improve when you remove a busy background. The day moved the way ordinary days move. Meetings. Notes. The small work of making sense. At 4:50, I closed my laptop, straightened the stack of papers inside the blue folder, and sat very still. I said the hour out loud. 5 in the evening. The final RSVP for my celebration. The final hour for any surprise that tried to wear the mask of family duty. Whatever came after would meet me on paper, not in a corner. Not at a table where I sat near the kitchen door. Not in whispers. Not anymore. When the minute hand touched the 12, something inside me did not flare, it settled. There is a difference between defiance and alignment. Defiance shouts, alignment nods. My chin tipped once. I stood. I carried the blue folder to the door, and I knew, with a steadiness that surprised me, that the next time the Greens tried to turn my life into a stage, I would bring my own lighting, my own script, and an audience of one who mattered. The hour had arrived. What waited just beyond it would try to feel familiar. I would answer only to what was true. The morning of the graduation party felt ordinary enough. I brewed coffee, checked my notes, and set the blue folder on the counter. I told myself it was just another family gathering, the kind I had endured for years, but deep down I knew better. Tuesday at 5 in the evening had passed. I had marked my own line. Now the family would test whether I meant it. The venue was a rented hall not far from the green estate. White tablecloths, strings of lights, and rows of chairs that looked too polished to sit on. I arrived early. As always, Harper strolled in later, carrying no boxes, offering no help, but immediately became the center of the room. My parents followed close, their eyes bright in that particular way. That meant something had been arranged behind my back. At first, I thought the odd looks and hushed voices were about me, the graduate, the one being celebrated, but then a cousin congratulated Harper. Another relative asked if Harper's plans for the estate were coming along smoothly. My chest tightened. Plans estate. My estate was the condo I had just offered on, not the family's $1 million home. I should have asked right then. But I waited. Waiting has always been my mistake. The speeches began, and mine was short, thank you to colleagues, to a handful of friends, to anyone who had ever believed I could build my own life. I mentioned no family by name. I thought that omission would speak loudly enough. Then Harper stood, a champagne glass in hand, voice rising over the crowd. This is a celebration of futures. Harper announced, and I am proud to say the green legacy will remain intact. We've taken the first steps to secure the estate for generations." Applause broke out, confused but eager. I sat frozen. The first steps. What steps? My father clapped hardest. My mother dabbed her eyes with a napkin. The room shifted. The party was no longer mine. After the toast, an aunt leaned over and whispered, "You must be relieved, the taxes are handled." Taxes, I had seen the bills. I had even covered one installment myself months before. Something was wrong. When I finally confronted Harper near the dessert table, the smile was too calm. "Do not make a scene." Harper murmured, "The papers are in motion. It is better this way. You are reliable. But I am the face of the family." I asked, "What papers?" Harper only tilted the glass and said, "You will come around. You always do." It was then I noticed the envelope half hidden under the gift pile. A copy of something stamped with the county seal. I slipped it quietly into my folder before anyone saw. Later that night, under the glow of my desk lamp, I read it, a preliminary filing for a refinancing tied to the Green estate. My name was not listed as borrower, but the document referenced a trust, the Green Family Revocable Trust, established with signatures that should not have existed. The deadline I had set Tuesday at 5 suddenly carried new weight. This was what they had been working toward. They had tried to use my milestone as cover for Harper's move, and they had expected me to smile while they shifted the ground beneath my feet. I sat back in my chair. The envelope spread open, and whispered the words I should have said years earlier, "Not this time." The graduation party was over. The real confrontation had just begun. That night, after the party, I set the envelope under a lamp and read every line twice. The document was a preliminary filing for a refinance tied to the Green estate. It referred to a trust I had never been shown in full. It framed the move as family governance and listed Harper as the point of contact. My name appeared nowhere it mattered. The timing was no accident. They had tried to float it beneath the noise of my celebration and hoped I would smile through it. I did not smile. I brewed tea. I placed the blue folder on my table. I opened a fresh legal pad and gave the page a date in longhand. When fog gathers, I prefer ink. Morning brought a thin winter light and the steadiness that comes with it. I began with the county records. The clerk's office sat 2 blocks from a bakery that opened early. I walked past the smell of warm bread and into a room shaped by shelves, stampuds, and the kind of quiet that makes you lower your voice. "I need to confirm a few entries on property records and tax status," I said. The clerk who stepped forward wore a name badge that read Marla. Her face had the calm of someone who has seen every version of the same story. I gave her the parcel number, the address, and the date. Marla tapped keys with an economy I admired. Her eyes moved left to right. The screen reflected in her glasses. "Taxes," she said. "Show paid and current as of the 15th of last month." I wrote that down exactly. Paid and current, 15th of last month. "There is also a preliminary attempt to record a refinance inquiry," she added. "Not an instrument yet, more like a feeler. No effect on title." I wrote that down too. The phrase felt like a fence post anchoring wire. "Can I obtain a certified print of what you see?" I asked. "And a receipt for that print." She nodded. The printer hummed. Paper warmed my hands. I paid the small fee, and she stamped the bottom corner with a raised seal that left a ridge you could feel with a fingertip. "If you anticipate more activity," Marla said, "you may file a notice of continuing interest on behalf of a trust. Assuming the terms name you." She said it as weather, not advice. That is my favorite kind of guidance. I walked to a quiet bench and read the print again. Taxes current. Preliminary inquiry. No effect. If the family story at the party had implied emergency, the record told another story altogether. I breathed out. Steadiness, not triumph, returned. Then I made a second stop across the square at my bank. I asked for a copy of the month I had paid a late installment when no one else would. The teller printed the line that read more than $18,184.73. I circled the number. I wrote the date in the margin as if teaching myself to trust my eyes. Back home, I opened the laptop and created a single document that would serve as the spine for everything party to paper. I titled it in plain words. I listed sections, taxes, refinance inquiry, trust, correspondence, timeline. Under timeline, I drew a thin line and wrote out the hour I had chosen weeks before Tuesday at 5 in the evening. Final RSVP for the party, final hour for any surprise that wished to call itself family duty. I made a second line Wednesday morning. 9 in the morning. Estate lawyer consultation. I dialed the number and booked the appointment before I could doubt myself. The trust was the next question. I knew enough to know that trusts often carry both protection and trap. Depending on who wrote them, I had not been shown the full instrument. I searched my emails and found a message with the subject Family Future that I had clipped but not opened. I opened it now. The language was modern and vague, at once strength and legacy. Streamline decision. Align resources. An attached draft mentioned a successor trustee without naming one. A later thread referenced a revised Article 12 to ensure smooth financing. Revised by whom? Approved by whom? To be activated under what conditions? I printed the thread, highlighted each phrase that only sounded like clarity, and set the stack under a binder clip. Midday brought a message by mistake in a family group chat that I had muted months ago but never left. Harper wrote, "We will have the page ready. Riley can sign with the cake. It will look like a toast." A cousin sent back a line of applause. I took a screenshot and slid it into the folder, then copied the text into my timeline. I did not reply. I have learned that silence can be a blade when you hold it correctly. It cuts only the rope that once bound you. By afternoon, the folder contained more than memory county confirmation. Bank proof. The thread about aligning resources. The party photo where Harper had lifted a glass to preserving legacy. Every few pages I added a note to my future self. The self who might waver when familiar voices grew loud again. You have the page, you have the time, you have the rule. No signatures without me present. I copied that rule on a card and placed it at the front like a title. That evening I called a colleague who has a gift for contract. The kind of person who reads a clause the way a mechanic listens to an engine. I summarized the situation in 2 minutes. I stuck to pages. Not feelings. You do not need their permission to say no. The colleague said, but you will want structure. Ask for the full instrument. If they will not provide it, ask the lawyer to read from the recorded copy. If there is an Article 12, it will either protect title or open a door. Either way, the county record says taxes current. That matters. I thanked them. I wrote that matters beside the line from Marla. Sleep came easy, the kind of sleep that follows the first correct step after years of wrong ones. In the morning, I ironed a plain shirt, packed the folder, and took a bus downtown. The estate lawyer's office sat on the 4th floor of a building with a quiet lobby, wood paneling, 3 chairs, a plant someone cared for. The receptionist confirmed my name. The clock near her desk matched the time on my wrist. I like rooms that agree with themselves. The lawyer greeted me without theatrics, asked for my purpose, and listened without interrupting while I laid out the chain graduation party, preliminary filing, county confirmation, bank record, rogue emails, Tuesday at 5 in the evening, my standing rule. He nodded twice, then retrieved a file from a cabinet and placed it on the table. Green Family Revocable Trust. He read. The paper had the same heavy feel as the county print. Dated March the 15th last year. Recorded. 22 pages. There is an Article 12. He turned the pages with clean hands. Article 12 protection against unauthorized encumbrance. No mortgage, lien, or refinance may be executed without written consent of the acting trustee. Activation condition, county taxes current. He tapped the margin. This is not vague. If you are the named successor trustee or the acting trustee, by designation upon certain conditions which we can confirm, you carry the pen. Further, any attempted instrument recorded without consent is voidable. I did not grin. I learned a long time ago that relief, like grief, deserves quiet. Am I named? I asked. He scanned Article 3. Yes. Successor trustee Riley Green. To serve as acting trustee in the event of attempted encumbrance without unanimous written consent. Taxes current, he said, glancing at the print I had brought from Marla. Clause 12 is live. Marla's stamp. The bank receipt. The email thread. The party envelope. The trust. Separately, they were noise. Together, they were accord. The lawyer outlined next steps with the tidy certainty of a person who enjoys finishing what others started badly. File a notice of continuing interest today. Send certified letters summarizing your position. Provide any lender with a copy of Article 12 upon request. And document delivery times. Do not argue at dinner tables. Only paper. I set a personal deadline. I said, Tuesday at 5 in the evening for acknowledgement. That hour has passed. Then you also set the tone. He replied, propose 2 paths in writing. 1, withdraw the refinance attempts and confirm in writing. 2, proceed. And you will void the instrument and record your interest by morning. He paused. Be brief. I left with copies stamped, a short letter drafted in the lawyer's neat hand, and a calm that felt earned. Outside, a bus exhaled at the curb. The sky was a faded blue you only get on cold days. I walked back to the county recorder and filed the notice. The clerk read the entry number aloud. I repeated it. She smiled at the habit and slid me a receipt. I wrote the number on my legal pad and underlined it once. At home, I assembled the packets, one for my parents, one for Harper, one for the mysterious advisor who had appeared in those emails with grand language and no grounding. Each packet included the trust excerpt, the county confirmation, my bank proof, a copy of the filed notice, and a letter with 1 paragraph, 2 sentences. No adjectives. I stood at the counter and said the time out loud as I sealed the envelopes. Tomorrow afternoon, the postmark would speak in my place. That is what paper is for. It carries a voice past the rooms where voices fail. I placed the blue folder back on the table. I straightened the spine. I turned off the lamp. Another chapter had begun without theatrics. The next one would not need volume either. It would need the same thing this one had needed from the start: a steady hand, a clock, and pages that do not flinch when looked at in good light. The letters went out on a Thursday. Each packet carried the same Wake County confirmation, trust excerpts, my bank proof, the notice of continuing interest, and a short, clipped paragraph that left no room for debate. I paid extra for certified mail, stood at the counter until the clerk stamped every receipt, and tucked the slips in my blue folder. Paper does not shout, but it endures. It is harder to dismiss than any plea spoken at a dinner table. By Saturday morning, the first call came not from my parents, not even from Harper, but from a cousin who had overheard a storm of voices in my parents' kitchen. You sent them papers, they asked. Voice sharp. You cannot do that. Family solves things within walls. I thanked them for the update and ended the call. If the walls had ever solved anything, I would not have needed documents. Sunday, Harper arrived uninvited at my condo. No knock. Only the buzz of the doorbell held too long. When I opened the door, Harper held one of my letters. The paper crumpled at the edges. You think this means anything, Harper said? You think one clause gives you power? The voice was loud enough to draw a neighbor out into the hall. Harper lowered it then. Hissed, you are ruining everything. I kept my tone even. Article 12 exists. Taxes are current. The county has my notice on record. I watched the words land like stones. Harper's face twitched. The confidence frayed. If you have a different reading, you can bring counsel to court. You will regret this. Harper muttered, and for the first time in years I heard fear beneath the arrogance. Monday brought a heavier blow. My employer forwarded a message sent from an anonymous address, screenshots of my bank statement, cropped and highlighted, accompanied by a claim that I had misappropriated family funds. It was laughable on its face. But reputation is delicate. I spent the afternoon with HR, explaining the context, handing over the certified receipts that proved the payment had come from my personal account. My supervisor nodded, unimpressed with the smear. We see family wars spill into offices more than you think. She said, keep your records handy. The attempt had backfired. In trying to shame me, Harper had put the family's desperation on record at my workplace. The balance was shifting. That evening, my father called. His tone was not angry, it was weary, as if he had aged 10 years since the party. Why could you not just let it go, he asked. Your sibling needs this chance. I have given chance after chance. I said, I covered taxes when no one else would. I gave loans never repaid. I swallowed every slight at every birthday, every Christmas. I am done letting it go. He sighed. You have always been the responsible one. That has never meant being the silent one. I replied, and I ended the call. By Tuesday, a week after the RSVP deadline that had become my line in the sand, the estate lawyer called me in. They attempted to record the refinance anyway. He said, "It was flagged and voided under Article 12. Thanks to your notice, the lender has withdrawn interest." I sat in his office and let the words settle. Years of manipulation, of watching Harper be handed keys while I was handed chores, had funneled into this a single piece of paper that had stopped the machine cold. But storms do not dissipate after one strike. They circle, they lash out, they search for weak point. I knew Harper would not stop. There would be more whispers, more stunts, more desperate maneuver. Yet for the first time, I felt the ground steady under me. The storm was gathering. Yes, but it was gathering on my side now, not against me. And when the next wave broke, I would be ready not with raised voice, but with proof that no one could erase. The days after the lender withdrew felt oddly quiet. Like the house after a storm when tree branches stop tapping the windows and you hear your own breathing again. I went to work. I cooked simple meals. I walked in the evenings along a street where porch lights clicked on one by one. I kept the blue folder on the kitchen table, not because I expected a fight at breakfast, but because looking at orders steadied me. When life has tried to rearrange your spine for years, a square stack of paper can feel like a brace. Silence, though, does not always mean peace. Family has a way of trying new doors when the front one locked. An email slipped into my inbox late on a Friday, copied to distant cousins and a few family friends who like to stay informed. The subject line read, in grand language, reallocation proposal. The body was the voice I knew too well, lofty phrases about legacy, unity. The green name, followed by a single sentence that said everything plainly. Liquidate Riley's condo fund and apply proceeds toward estate obligations. Present for signature at public gathering to avoid disruption. There it was, naked under the perfume. Not a request. A plan. I did not answer. I printed the email, slid it into a fresh plastic sleeve, and wrote the date across the top in clear letters. I called the estate lawyer's office and left a calm message. New correspondence. Proposed misuse of personal funds. Request for acknowledgement of prior notice and trust clause. Then I made tea and watched the steam climb. People think restraint is passivity. I have learned it is a kind of aim. The next morning, I received a text from a neighbor who had once worked part-time at a title company. She had heard from a friend that chatter about the Green estate had resurfaced downtown. A rumor of a second attempt. This time through an advisor who prided himself on creative solutions. I thanked her and wrote the note into my timeline. Rumor is not evidence, but rumor often sketches the outline where evidence will later stand. By Sunday, the family group thread lit up with photographs from a brunch I had not been invited to. Silverware gleamed. Strawberries, bright as ornaments. A caption about forgiveness and togetherness. I recognized the dining room. My chair near the kitchen door sat empty. In the comments, someone typed that every family has one member who makes things harder than they should be. Hearts appeared under the line. I turned off the screen and watered the fern by the window. Some plants recover if you stop moving them around. On Monday, the advisor whose name had floated in those emails sent a letter on heavy stationery, the kind that believes weight equals truth. He framed his proposal as an opportunity for me to demonstrate commitment. He asked that I attend a family dinner at the estate on Wednesday evening and come prepared to sign a temporary consent. He used the phrase temporary twice, as though repetition could conjure a clause that did not exist. He closed with a sentence about harmony that read like a threat in a soft hat. I carried the letter to my table and read it aloud. Once for the room, and once for myself. Then I drafted my reply on plain paper with a fine point pen. I thanked him for his time. I declined the dinner. I reminded him that Article 12 contains no temporary consent. I referenced the notice of continuing interest recorded in the county books. I wrote one more sentence. Short and final. I will not authorize any encumbrance. Refinance. Hors lien. I made a copy for my file and sent the original by certified mail, the clerk stamping the receipt with a thud that sounded like the period my paragraph deserved. Wednesday evening came anyway. Because time is not a negotiator. I made soup, set the radio low, and cleaned the counter while a winter moon slid up above the rooftops. At 8, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw my mother, my father, and Harper on the landing. Coats zipped against the cold, eyes bright with the kind of resolve that has never once accounted for another person's no. I opened the door but left the chain on. I have learned that kindness does not require access. My mother lifted a casserole as if it were a passport. "We thought we might talk," she said. "Just family." "We can talk here," I said. "Through the chain is fine." Harper rolled eyes in a practiced arc. "This is ridiculous." "What is ridiculous?" I said evenly. "Is pretending that a temporary consent exists when the trust does not contain one." My father tried a new tone, a tired pastor's cadence that had worked on me when I was young. "We are asking for a gesture of unity." "You are asking for my signature." I said. "That is not unity. That is leverage." I kept my voice even. Even voices unsettle people who are used to winning by volume. Harper slid a manila folder into the crack as if they could feed paper to me like a stray cat. "Here." The advisor redrafted. "It is simple. Leave it on the mat." I said, "I will add it to my records." "You will not even read it?" my mother asked. As if reading were the same as agreeing. "I will read it." I said, "And then I will decline it. As I have declined every other attempt to rename your desire as duty." Harper's jaw tightened. "You are making enemies." "Then I would rather they declare themselves in writing." I said, "It helps with the filing." Silence pooled. In the hallway, a neighbor's door opened and shut. A child laughed once and was hushed. My mother shifted the casserole from hand to hand. "You have always been the responsible one," she said. As though the sentence were a bandage, she could press over a wound she had not examined. "Responsible is not the same as expendable," I said. My father sighed and glanced at Harper. "There will be a family dinner on Sunday." He said, "We expect you there." "I will not attend." I said, "If you need to deliver documents, use the post." Harper's passions broke. "You do realize," Harper said, voice low and edged, "that when the will is read one day, people will remember how uncooperative you were." "Perhaps," I said. "They will also remember that I kept their roof from being used as collateral for your next idea." Another silence. This one colder. Then I did something my younger self would not have done. I thanked them for coming. I wished them a good night. And I closed the door gently on the casserole, the folder, and the performance that had once trapped me like a moth to a lamp. Inside, I set the folder on the table, washed my hands, and spooned soup into a bowl. Only after I had eaten. After the kettle clicked and the cup warmed my fingers. Did I open the folder? The redraft was what I expected, fewer adjectives. The same shape. A single line asked for a temporary consent, acknowledging the necessity of swift action. I slid the page into a sleeve, wrote "declined" in the margin with the date, and placed it behind the advisor's letter. Order is its own kind of lullaby. On Thursday morning, the estate lawyer called. They delivered a revised request to our office. He said, "We have responded in writing, citing Article 12 and your filed notice. The lender has confirmed they will not proceed without your signature." They also made a note that further attempts will be recorded for compliance purposes. "Thank you," I said. My voice surprised me by how calm it sounded. Not relieved exactly. Not triumphant. Just a line. "We can add one more measure," he said. "A simple letter to the county that any communication about title should copy your address. It is a courtesy. But courtesies sometimes prevent theater." "Do it," I said. "I like a paper audience." That evening, I sorted the day's mail. Among the envelopes lay a postcard from a client I had helped months earlier. The photo showed a small house with a fresh coat of paint, shutters the color of late hydrangeas. On the back, they had written 3 lines we signed last week. "The light in the kitchen is soft in the morning. Thank you for teaching us to keep records." I tucked the card into the blue folder's front pocket, not as evidence. As reminder, families build myths about what strength looks like. In ours, strength had always resembled Harper's smile beneath a chandelier. I had believed that once. Now strength looked like a chain latched across my door, a letter mailed with a stamped receipt, a trust clause read aloud in a quiet office, and a clock that I set and kept. Strength, it turns out, can be very small and very still. The line held, not because I shouted, because paper did what paper does when you let it carry the weight you once tried to hold with your hands alone. The line held, but the family did not take the lesson. They gathered again on Sunday without me. And I learned from a cousin's social post that the dinner had turned into something else, entirely a stage. Harper stood in the center, waving a folder, telling anyone who would listen that I was sabotaging the family out of spite. The video clip, shaky but clear, caught Harper saying, "They would rather watch the estate rot than see me succeed." That sentence spread faster than any letter could. By Monday morning, colleagues, neighbors, even clients had forwarded me the clip with raised eyebrows. It should have humiliated me. Instead, it exposed Harper. The mask of charm had slipped into a public tantrum, streamed on a platform that never forgets. People outside the family saw what I had lived for years, entitlement, dressed as destiny. Still, humiliation cuts both ways. My parents called, voices sharp with panic. "You must fix this." My father said, "You must tell people it is not true." "I will not." I said, "I did not choose those words. Harper did. Let them own them." The next strike was financial. On Tuesday, I received a notice from my bank, an attempted inquiry into my account. Flagged as suspicious, the bank froze the login for security and asked me to confirm whether I had authorized it. I had not. The attempted access came from an IP registered at the estate's address. Proof again. Though bitter to see, I requested the full log, highlighted the line with the estate's location, and added it to my blue folder. Wednesday brought escalation. A courier knocked at my door with a packet, a demand for mediation. Signed not only by Harper but by my parents. The language was dressed in civility. But beneath the layers was a threat if I refused to cooperate. They would pursue remedies in court. I carried the packet to the estate lawyer. He flipped through the pages. Expression unreadable. "They have overreached," he said finally. "They cannot compel mediation without mutual consent. We will respond in kind, calmly, formally, and then we will prepare for the possibility that they file regardless." That evening, I sat alone in my condo, the folder open before me. For as long as I can remember, I had wanted family to mean safety. Now it meant paperwork, deadlines, and clips that went viral for the wrong reasons. I should have been tired. Strangely, I was not. I felt clear. I drafted my own letter not to them, but to myself. I wrote, "You are not their scapegoat anymore. You are not the wallet they reach for. You are not the silence they depend on." I signed it, dated it, and slid it into the front pocket of the folder. Not evidence, but foul. The breaking point had arrived, and for once, I was the one deciding what broke. The mediation never happened. Their lawyer must have told them the same thing mine did. You cannot compel what the other side does not consent to. A week passed, then another, and the threats thinned into silence. For the first time in months, my phone did not buzz with demands disguised as invitations. The quiet was almost unfamiliar. I filled it with small routines. Morning walks to the same corner cafe, where the barista began to recognize my order. Evenings with a library book and a kettle steaming on the stove. Saturdays spent rearranging the condo, my condo. Finally signed, finally mine. I painted the walls a pale color that caught the morning light. I bought a fern for the corner. When I set the pot down, I realized I was building a home no one else could leverage. The green estate still stood, columns white, windows tall. I drove by once out of habit. From the street, it looked unchanged. But I knew better. Permanence does not live in walls, it lives in records. And the records now bore my name in ink. Harper tried to reclaim the spotlight online, posting polished photos with captions about resilience and rebirth. The comment sections told a different story. People had seen the viral clip, heard the tone, noticed the cracks. Likes dwindled, sympathy drifted. Entitlement had become visible. And once seen, it cannot be unseen. My parents sent one final letter. This time short, "We wish you well." It read, "No requests, No demands. Only 6 words that said less about care than about surrender. I filed it in the blue folder with everything else. Closure does not always come dressed as apology. Sometimes it arrives as absence. Life did not turn cinematic. I did not rise to applause. Nor did I slam doors. I learned to measure peace in smaller units, a bank balance untampered with, a key that fits only my lock, a night's sleep without rehearsing counterarguments. Strength, I discovered, is less about striking back than about no longer standing where you can be struck. If you ask me now what remains, I will tell you clarity. The knowledge that families can wound deeper than strangers, but paper can shield where words fail. The trust clause that once felt like fine print became the hinge on which my freedom turned. And the blue folder, thick with stamps and dates, sits on my shelf not as a weapon but as proof that I held the line. I sometimes think of the younger version of me, clearing plates while Harper made toasts, swallowing every unfair turn. I wish I could place this folder in their hands. Let them feel the ridges of the seals, the cool edges of order. I cannot. What I can do is live forward with the lesson intact. Families tell myths about loyalty. Mine told me it meant obedience. I have rewritten it to mean boundaries. And that, I think, is the truer legacy.